We got audio. Okay.
Okay. So this is an interview with Brian Blain, who's an incredibly talented and colorful person on the Toronto music scene. And so my first question is, what is your position at the Blues Society, and what do you do?
Well, when I got here in 1990, that was one of the first gigs I went to. Was a Blues Society event. It was a guitar workshop, which they used to do every year, less often these days. And I got to hear some amazing musicians, meet a few folks, and found out about this Blues Society. And I don't know if it was right at that occasion, but at some point somebody said, they were looking for volunteers to help with the newsletter. And I was already into desktop publishing. I had a little Macintosh computer, and, I knew a lot. And I worked for newspapers from the time I was 15 years old. I was working for the Sherbrooke Daily Record that was, owned by... what was his name? Conrad owned it later, but the first guy that owned it, you would know as well, John Bassett.
Right.
So I was working for John Bassett at that point, and then his son, one of his boys, came and worked there one summer. It was like checking out the sticks. Anyway, so I had a whole background in that, and I volunteered to help on the Blues newsletter. And when we did that for a while, maybe a year before the fellow that they were paying to do the layout. And in those days, it was like cutting up, going to a typesetter and then cutting and pasting up, doing a layout. But the minute we switched over to a computer, and the fellow that was doing it said, Brian Blain is doing most of the work. You don't need me. And so I now turned from a volunteer to being the honorarium kid, and so I was getting a little something every month, and I was doing the newsletter. And that was mid-'90s. And I've been doing it ever since. I was made managing editor right off the top. Sometimes I practically write that thing from top to bottom. Other times I'm just making everything fit, And that's been my gig. And after I'd been doing that for a while, the marketing manager at the Toronto Jazz Festival, approached Eric Andrews, who was the Blues Society guy, and said, well, who does your newsletter? And he said, I'm Brian Blain. And so, boom, now I'm making the newsletter for the Jazz Festival. And then the artistic director of the Jazz Festival, his ex-wife, was the president of the Musicians Union. And I guess at some point she indicated they needed somebody. And so now I'm making the newsletter for the Musicians Union. And I became kind of the desktop publishing guy. But none of these gigs were anything remotely full-time,
Right.
A few days here, a few days there,
Right.
and I get it out and get it to print and then back to guitar playing.
Excuse me if I can't recall your name. Old age is wreaking havoc on my brain. But there's one reel left in this movie, and you can have a leading role. But go easy on me, honey. I'm not 50 anymore. Well, the label says they'll sign me if I'm prepared to hit the road. But I don't drive in them blizzards, can't lift them heavy loads. But if it's a short itinerary, if we can keep it close to home, like port credit would be fine. And go easy on me, honey. I'm not 50 anymore. I tell all the pretty women I'm not the man I was before. I don't get out like I used to. Is there a washroom on this floor? I'm blind without my glasses. Just point me to the door. And go easy on me, honey. I'm not 50 anymore.
Well, on the jamming culture, I was going to say that this was the most fulfilling aspect of playing music for people. You know, I have to say, I never really worried too much if I was playing for a handful of people or 40,000 people.
Right.
With the jams, I would often be playing only to 20 people or so, but then there'd be one person that, I would say, hey, you play? And he went, well, yeah, but no, not really, And I said, come on, I got an extra guitar here. Let's do a blues song. And hardly anybody could resist, everybody knows a blues song.
Yeah.
And they don't worry that they're going to get the wrong chords because it's always the same chords, mostly. And so I got one guy up. It was so nice that I finally got his wife was the one who got him up because I was teasing him a little bit from the stage. I know you play, come on up. And so he did come up, and then and he got through the tune, but he comes back the next week, and he says, Brian, my guitar had been in the closet for years, and I got it out. And he said, it's a beautiful guitar. It's a Larrivee. And now started playing it. So, hats off to you. And that makes you feel good, eh?
Does.
And another time, a little kid, he's maybe 12 years old, but I said, come on, we're going to play a blues. Can you play a blues? And the kids go, oh, yeah, I guess so.
Cool.
And then we're jamming along, and I don't know if it's at the end of the song or in the middle or some point, I lean over and I say, that bass player is from Downchild, eh?
Cool.
And the kid goes, what? I'm playing with Downchild?
Cool.
So moments like that is wonderful, but every jam has a moment or two of magic,
Yes, they do.
and that is really what I did in Toronto more than genuine gigs, was hosting these regular jams because it was usually a regular residency and it would go on for a long time. Then one barbecue joint was great, and the barbecue was delicious. And then we were at a place called the Gladstone Hotel for a while. That was a big, more fancier room
it has a
than,
name.
And then we ended up at the Old Mill, which was old world hotel resort, and I'm playing in something that it's the jazz room, and where they have all kinds of featured jazz artists at all times. I think even during the week, it wasn't just a weekend thing. You would have like your Robbie Botage and famous local jazz guys, and maybe some touring artists, not too much. But the thing about this jam and this gig was it was a union gig, and so it paid union scale.
Fantastic.
And union scale was not something you saw at other jams. You were lucky, you were happy to get $50 to be the host.
That's right.
And a participant would be happy to get a beer or two.
Right.
That was the jamming world. But
Yeah.
anyway, at that level of jamming, it was terrific because I could get anybody to come and play with me. And I knew them all anyway.
Right.
So I'm calling folks that I know, and they're coming over, and they get paid scale, so it's worth their while.
It is. And it was.
And so that went on till COVID. Like March 14th, 2020, was my last night at the Old Mill. And Julian Fouth and Ken Whiteley were going to do it with me, and Michelle was there for drums. And then right before the gig, Julian called. He said, and now we're all hearing about COVID, and Julian's on the phone saying, I've got this cough, and I'm not sure if I should come over there. And I said, stay home, we'll get through this. And I didn't know it then, but when they had canceled everything after me.
Right.
And when I walk into the gig, they've got a big sandwich board, and it has all the famous jazz guys that played before me, and then it has me, Brian Blain's Blues Jam, Campfire Jam, we called it.
Right.
And then under me are a whole bunch more with scratched out saying canceled due to COVID,
Right.
And that was my last gig at the Old Mill, and I never got back there. And I never got back really to hosting any jams too much, but I did host my birthday party.
Right.
Hello, everybody. How are you? How are you? Very good to see your faces today. And to be here celebrating our good friend, Mr. Brian Blain. Give it up for Brian Blain. He even brought us a cake. Cake! Well, this is the story of my life, folks. I put it all together chronologically. I pulled some songs out of the archives, songs I never really did in a Brian Blain show, but this is my, what did we call it? This is my celebration of my life while I'm still here. And we're talking about my time in Toronto. But before I got to Toronto, I was living in the Eastern Townships. Anybody here from the Eastern Townships? I heard a little something there. And I was playing music there, played all kinds of music, folk groups. I studied string bass for a while. Did you know that, George? I studied string bass, and I was the prize pupil. So they invited me to sit in with the Sherbrooke Symphony Orchestra. And I had a chance to play with some more musicians than I've ever seen in one place. Anyway, the last band I played with in the townships was called Oliver Klaus. I wrote a song about those days. There's a stop where everybody stops. It was down in the townships on Old Black Throne, on a lakeside bar where the kids called home. In the 1970s, we rocked the house in a hot little band called Oliver Klaus. We had nothing to lose, we had the world to win. We were playing all summer at the Terrace Inn.
The Terrace Inn was in the Eastern Townships, Lac Brome. It's Brome Lake. You might have heard of Brome Lake duckling. That's what they're famous for.
Okay.
And that is sort of 100 miles or so from Montreal. And that's where I grew up and went back to because I had spent a few years in Ontario as a young copywriter at an ad agency.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 19, I left home. But then in my 20s, I ended up living in a lot of different villages and towns in the townships and playing with this band called Oliver Klaus.
Who was Oliver Klaus?
Well, they had a story. They were two brothers that started a band very early on in the maybe late 60s. And they were every region had their local
That's right, their
stars,
local cover
their band, and they played all the time. These two brothers, and they had kind of rotating bass players, and I was one of them.
Uh-huh.
But for 2 or 3 years, I got to play with the boys, and they had their own little recording studio. They pressed their own original music album on vinyl. At a time, late
That's
60s, when
extraordinary.
nobody did that, they had the wherewithal. They bought old recording equipment from a radio station that went bankrupt or
Fantastic.
something, and they set up a studio, and they learned how to record and how to make records, and they were a big deal in that little corner of the world.
Right. And you said you did covers.
And it was all covers. And, when I think about it now, I'm the bass player. I'm trying to learn the bass parts of it could be a Beatles song or Yes or something like that.
Right.
And all I've got is a little tiny radio with a speaker this big. And I'm trying to figure out what's the bass player doing, I'm not
Gotcha.
hearing anything.
So this lasted for what, 2-3 years?
Yeah.
How old are you?
And then I was still in my 20s,
Okay.
late 20s by then, I guess.
Okay. So you must have done, if it was 2-3 years, you must have done about 130 gigs.
It was, well, we were,
If it
that
was weekly.
Terrace Inn gig was all we did in the summer. And
Right.
it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday night.
Oh, so
three
3 nights
nights
a week.
every week at the
Right.
Terrace Inn, which was a dance hall that had even was there during the war. You know, it was
Right.
big bands were playing on that
Right.
stage and
Right.
stuff. And it was a very funky lakeside place, and it was full of underage kids. And there would
Right.
be 2 or 3 raids every
Anglos,
season.
Quebecois, or a mixture? How
I
did
guess it was pretty mixed, come to
Right.
think of it. And
Right.
and that's not like the rest of that area was very mixed, you know.
No.
You really had down Waterloo, you had one side where the French folks went
Right.
and another side. But in the case of the Terrace Inn, no, everybody came to hear Oliver Klaus.
Fantastic. And if you can reach back into your unconscious, what were the 10 or 15 big hits that you guys
Well,
covered?
I use it at
Don't tell me Great Balls of Fire, because I'll believe you.
No, the one tune that we were known for, people would come
Right,
out of
that's
there
what I
and
meant.
say, you know, these guys play Stairway to Heaven exactly like the record.
Really?
The guitar player had the total solo down, the vocals, everything, and the lead guy would switch to a 12-string guitar for the intro, and then we would have 2 guys with recorders playing.
Phenomenal.
They covered
And
it perfectly.
were these all Anglos, or was it Anglo-Quebecois? mix?
They were English. Oh yeah, totally.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I might have been the only one that spoke French. And
Right.
then one of them was an American, an expat, who had come up here, probably a draft dodger guy, and he had been in a very big band in Detroit or no Philadelphia area. And now he had moved to Canada just to get away from everything. They lived on a farm, and it was like total self-sufficient thing
Right.
he had
Off
going.
the grid.
Yeah, totally off the grid. But playing in this band, cranking it up, and we had a great old time. And the kids loved it, and that was my summers were just, that was so idyllic, you know, because the rest of the week I would just be hanging out, writing songs, playing guitar.
Right.
I didn't have that was provided enough income to keep you going. And come to think of it, it's probably about the same sort of money that you would make nowadays playing music, you know. Now I'm pushing 30, I'm more than 30 maybe, and I'm married, got a little family happening, living in the country, and but still trying to make music.
Right.
And playing at ski resorts here and there, but not a lot of gigs on my own. And I've got a little studio now in the back room of the T-shirt shop.
Right.
And one time, this woman comes by to buy a T-shirt, and mentions to Linda, my wife, that she's a musician. She's visiting from Toronto. She's here on a bike expedition or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so Linda says, "Well, you got to meet my husband. He's just in the back room here. He's got a little studio. He's a musician." And she comes back, and I play her a tune that I had just laid down on a cassette. I had just written it, and now this is the first version of it. And I play it for her. And she goes, "Wow, I love that song. And could you give me a copy of it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I copied a cassette, and she took the cassette. And now the marriage, meanwhile, within probably a year or two of that situation, the marriage is dissolving, and I've decided I'm moving to Toronto.
Okay.
And I land in Toronto, not quite on my feet. And but the first person I call is this gal, Dawn Duval,
Right.
who I had her number, and she had my cassette with my song on it.
Right.
And I said, "It's Brian Blain, remember from the Sutton?" And she said, "Oh, yes, of course." And I said, "Well, I'm in town, you know." She says, "Well, look, you got to come over to this club. We're playing in a club down in the beaches. It's called Lido's. You'll find it. And come and I got something to show you." And we get there, and I don't know if it's when I walk in or at some point. Anyway, they play my song. They've learned my song, and it's part of their show.
Marvelous. What's
And
the name
this
of
is
that
the song. And this is the song.
Why don't you dump that lump before he sets himself on fire? He's got an ashtray balancing on his spare tire. He's smelling up the living room. He won't pick up his socks. He makes some noises, but he never talks. Why don't you dump
But it was interesting. I was rehearsing with them, and we're running over a song, and Lorraine here, who you saw playing piano,
Right.
she says, "Stop, Brian." She says, This is not a swing. Play it straight on this one, please."
Right.
So okay, all right, we'll play it straight. We start again. She stops me again. She says, "You're still swinging it. Like play it straight."
Right.
And after 3 or 4 times, I said, like, I don't think I can not swing. I think I'm just feeling it. And it wasn't long after that I was out of that band. I couldn't not swing. You know who Hubert Sumlin is?
Nope.
He was Howlin' Wolf's guitar player
Okay.
for most of his career.
Right.
And he is a guitar god. If you asked
Right.
Eric Clapton or Jeff
Right.
Beck or any of the guys that, made a fortune playing blues guitar, who they thought was
the cat's meow.
the man, it was Hubert Sumlin.
Right.
And he was a very understated guy, and he didn't play. He was not a flashy guitar player, but he created some riffs or some style that everybody tried to emulate. And he talks about working with Howlin' Wolf, which was no easy chore because Howlin' Wolf was very demanding. At one point, Muddy Waters stole Hubert Sumlin from Howlin' Wolf, and there was a huge kerfuffle about that in the blues world, but eventually he got him back. Anyway, I was hosting a jam, and it was in St. Catharines. I was subbing for a fellow that it was his regular gig, but they called me in to replace him one Saturday afternoon. And I get off the stage from the first set, and this fellow who is a radio blues DJ and a promoter out that way comes up to me and says, "Brian, you come over to my booth. I got somebody I want you to meet." And I said, "I can't come now. I've got to deal with, I've got an amp or whatever. I had some kind of technical thing." And then he comes back again. He said, "Brian, come over here. You got to meet." And he still doesn't say who it is.
Gotcha.
But he gets me to the booth. He says, "Brian, I want you to meet Hubert Sumlin."
Whoa.
And it's like, whoa, yeah, all right. And we chat a little bit, and I say, I got my Strats right up there on the stage if you wanted to come and sit in. And he says, no, we just got off the plane, and I got to go to the hotel, and I'm tired. And okay, no worries. And they're having barbecue. But then, so I get up on stage, and I'm just about to start the second set, and this woman comes running up to the stage and says, "Hubert's going to play. Hubert's going to play. He's going to play for me."
Wow.
She had charmed him or whatever, and now he comes along, and I give him the Strat, and now I'm thinking, well, I don't know a single Howlin' Wolf song. That was my chance maybe to play something. Anyway, I try to get him to choose a song or start singing, and he's going, "No, you just do what you do. I'll play along," and he did. So I play a couple of Brian Blain songs, and he plays along with it.
Nice.
And it was lovely. Well, it was rough and ready, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And he was in the volumes of the guitars going into one amp, and there was a few little technical things there. But anyway, I'm playing with Hubert Sumlin.
Fantastic.
People would die for that privilege.
Fantastic.
And beyond that, then he says he's got to leave. But after the next set, he's still there. And I'm talking with him again, and he says, "Brian, and I remember the quote because he said, you got something, Brian. You got something good. I'm not going to forget you." And I said, "I'm putting that on my website." And
What year was this?
that would be in 95 or something like that.
Okay.
We're in the 90s now.
I gotcha.
And this is when I'm starting to host jam sessions
Right.
And meet more and more musicians. But that was a great moment. And I said, what was it after? What happened after that? Oh yeah, because he stayed. He watched me right till the very end, and then he left. And then the next day he was doing his big show, which was a Howlin' Wolf tribute concert, and that was in a big theater and everything. So I go to that show, and I'm sitting right up front. He's remembering me, and we have a little connection. And then he's coming off the stage, and he's struggling with his guitar. I said, "Look, let me put that away for you. His case is right there." So I'm putting away Hubert Sumlin's guitar in the case, and I'm carrying it off for him. And I thought, well, that's good. I'm carrying Hubert Sumlin's guitar.
Very nice. And he thinks that you're okay.
And he thinks I'm okay.
Yeah.
And, oh, this is the other part. I find out much later that Hubert Sumlin, when he says, "I'm going to remember you," it's because he had one of those memories. People said, a lot of people out of the blue would say, like, I get a phone call from Hubert on my birthday. Like, how does he remember my birthday?
Right.
There's somebody in Canada that he's met 2 or 3
Right.
times, and he remembered everybody's birthday. That was his
Phenomenal.
thing, and he would connect with people on their birthday. And I don't think I managed to tell him my birthday, but it meant even more when he said, "I'm not going to forget you."
That's a wonderful tale.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing? You're covering
And that was,
Howlin'
and so
Wolf?
after that, I learned a Howlin' Wolf song.
She's hot like red pepper, sweet like cherry wine. I'm so glad you love me all the time. She's my little baby, sweet as she can be. All the love she got, it all belongs to me. And if you hear me howling, howling for my darling, when we used to do this at the campfire jam, it was kind of a therapy moment. Everybody, I try to get the whole place to start howling. Yeah, that's the idea. Ow. Ow. Track low down. Ow.
So in 2005, just under 2 decades ago, you released an album called Overqualified for the Blues. And I haven't done a Google search, but I'm 99% sure that you can't find it anywhere else. Tell us about it.
No, if you did a Google search, it would show up a lot of places.
No,
'Cause
yours would, but no one else's.
No, nobody
that
ever
name.
covered that song. But yeah, no, that was, can't remember how I even thought of that phrase. But the how it all came about, though, was interesting.
Well, tell us that story.
I was working for that record label, Northern Blues, a brand new record label. They hired me,
Northern Blues or Northern Lights?
Northern Blues.
Oh, Northern Blues.
And it was kind of a subsidiary of Borealis Records. It was all, and they took me on because I was going to kind of help them get connected in the blues community, which I did. I had a mailing list, and I was also making a website. It was 2005. Well, actually, maybe websites had been happening for a bit. I'd already built one for the Jazz Festival and also for a Blues Society. So now I'm going to make him a website. And I'm going to help with his database and stuff like that. And that goes on for a year or so, and it was a great gig. And then I had given him my first CD that I made on my own, and it was called Who Paid You to Give Me the Blues? And I think we probably talked about that. But now for this one, he's been listening to Who Paid You to Give Me the Blues and says, "Brian, we could put that up on our label, And I said, "Well, yeah, sure." And then he said, "Well, maybe it'd be a good idea to add a couple of new songs, freshen it up, bonus tracks or whatever." I go up to the studio, and instead of making a couple of new tracks, I make 7 new tracks.
Fantastic.
And I put a band together, and we lay it down. I had the songs, so we laid them down. And I come back, and it's like everybody kind of nods. And, well, I guess we got a whole new album here. And that's what happened. I had those songs, and then I did 5 more with Michael Jerome Brown. We went to Montreal to do that. And now we had an album, and he put it out on the label. And when you go out on a label, it's a little different than the indie world, you know, because you're mailing out probably 500 free copies to every person that has a radio show or writes a column about blues or anything. And so it got out there, and it got a lot of beautiful reviews, and the odd offers of gigs kind of came in, but it was like, yeah, well, if you're ever in Alabama, and it's like, well, no, I'm never in Alabama, and you know, and nothing much. It didn't turn into a whole lot of gigs, but it got me. I had played with some fabulous people on it. Richard Bell was the piano player, and anybody that's played with Richard Bell knows what a privilege that was. He was even in the band for a while, and played mostly with Colin Linden, and wonderful piano player. And the other guys, Paul Reddick played on it. Michel played drums, Michel Joseph. And it was something to be proud of. And as you remarked, there's even some touches of humor kind of sewn through there.
Hilarious. It's an unusual lyric. It's an unusual. Can you comment on it?
Well,
it's
now
your lyric.
It's all.
What does it mean?
I think you'd have to just say it's all tongue in cheek, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's
and
the extent of it.
such.
I hope so.
I thought it's hilarious when I first heard it.
But part of it is true. Overprotected, never abused. True.
Right?
I guess I've been lucky. Man, I got it made. Having fun in the sun, got it made in the shade. I got my problems, but nothing like you. I'm overqualified for the blues. If I get angina, if my blood sugar's too low, when things go wrong, I know where to go. Overprotected, never abused. I'm overqualified for the blues.
I've never heard a blues piece which is as light and self-deprecating in the kind of Stephen Leacock way.
A lot of my songs, not this one, but I dare say half, are stories about people, you know,
Right.
or a place, or an incident, you know.
Right.
That's kind of where I've gravitated to it. So I don't have too many songs about lost my baby and want her back, you know.
And just when you thought you were over the shock, then a spark appears. And like a moth to the flame, you don't worry about pain. You don't have any fears of the big fire flaring from where it was hid. The big fire scorching a husband and kid. You wonder what it's all about. You're sure that you're so full of doubt. And what'll it take to put out the big fire? So that was like the exit music. Goodbye, Eastern Townships. Goodbye to a chapter. And then getting to Toronto. What a scene arriving in Toronto. You know, I ended up at the Black Swan Blues Jam. It was Gary Kendall was doing this for many years. And I was the new kid. I just got in there, and the first time I went, they actually didn't let me jam. Nobody knew me. You had to have somebody vouch for you. But the next time, I got up on stage, And Gary Kendall says, folks, he said something like, this tune, he wanted to do a B.B. King song, and he asked me if I knew it, The Thrill Is Gone. I said, oh, sure, I know The Thrill Is Gone. Well, I never played The Thrill Is Gone. And they're counting it in. And in the count-in, Gary kind of leans over into my ear and he says, you realize that the solo's off the top, you know, or whatever that thing is. So that was my introduction to the Toronto jamming scene. And I love jamming.
And a blues jam is very particular because blues is easy to play, and you could even be a beginner and get up at a blues jam. Well, you'd be amazed. Sometimes somebody gets up, I just play one note over and over, and you can say that's not playing well, but if it's in time and it's in right key, then, he's jamming.
Yeah.
And so I was running jams where it was like everybody welcome as long as it's the blues, you know.
Right.
And then on other occasions, I had everybody welcome as long as it's the blues, but it's a slide-free zone. Because you can't fake it on a slide. You know, you're either perfectly in pitch or it's horrible.
Or it's like a 7-year-old starting violin.
Yeah. But Forgotten and a few other tunes is what made the jams rise up a little bit. And everybody that came and played with me on those jam sessions remembers this song, you know, because we got liftoff.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Never saw Louisiana. Never threatened by a flood. But after Hurricane Katrina, and Crescent City turned to mud, and I thought of the musicians who made all the sounds we love. Hardly ever compensated. Lucky just to get a crumb. Forgotten. They invented jazz, forgotten. Gave us all the blues, forgotten. And the Dixieland, forgotten. Rockabilly too, forgotten. They gave us ragtime, forgotten. And the second line, forgotten. Cajun and Zydeco, forgotten. Even rock and roll.
So how did you become musical in Sherbrooke? It certainly wasn't through the blues. Tell us where you got your
Well, then I got a
basic
great
technique.
story for you. Because I was asked this not so long ago.
Well, tell us
And,
again.
or no, I always remembered this, but I had been talking to an organist, maybe it was Lance Anderson or somebody else who plays a B3. And I said, I got to tell you, my first recollection of anything musical, any music coming at me, was when I was a toddler. I was crawling on the floor, and my mother, who was a kind of, she loved to go out drinking, daytime, nighttime, anytime. And so she would take me with her to this lakeside joint outside of Sherbrooke, on Little Lake Magog, it was called.
Right.
And she would be in the bar there and have me with her, or it was a bar restaurant, I suppose.
Right.
And my first recollection is kind of hearing sounds and crawling up to the stage. I suppose maybe she didn't notice or whatever. I'm now right at the foot of a stage, and I'm looking head on to these two stockinged feet playing on some pedals, and they're pushing pedals like a
Right.
B3 has, right? So
Right.
it's, I guess, whatever. It was at my eye level, and I see these feet, stocking feet on the pedals, and I feel the wind from the Leslie, I'm feeling it like, what is this? Not to mention the groove and whatever else was happening. And that is the moment when I knew there was something else between language, because I was already learning two languages,
Right.
but this was a third one that I was just hearing for the first time.
The language of the gods.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
We're going to leave you with a nice, quiet tune. I've written probably enough for an album, musician songs. So that's how I've been chronicling my time in Toronto, is writing musician songs about like Scott Cushney or Kathy McDonald I played with. Here's one about Lenny Breau. He was a legend in Toronto, across the world really, in guitar circles. And what a wonderful time I've had here tonight. Thank you very much to everybody that stuck around. Last time I saw Lenny, we were driving in a Winnipeg rain. Gonna play at some park concert, but first a stop at Long and McQuaid. We got rained out, the concert canceled. So we went up to Dick and Sandy's to jam. How Winnipeg loved Lenny. He was their music man. But then he moved to Nashville, and later on LA. Breaking into the big time and making him a name. Ah, the sound of his harmonics could make the most bitter picker smile. And when he died, we lost his presence. But there'll always be a Lenny Breau style. George Kohler. Some people often wonder what these musicians are about. But the music keeps on trucking. That's why we took this route. I remember someone told me, I repeated to my wife, some people live for music, but musicians play for life. Some people live for music, I know who you are, but musicians play for life. And it's been the event of my lifetime tonight. Thank you so much for coming out. Thanks to all the musicians. George Kohler on bass. Michelle Joseph on drums. Out there somewhere. And I couldn't even remember the cast of thousands that came to help me celebrate. Have another piece of cake.